My name is Alex. I'm from the Philippines. I'm a 29-year-old guy and currently a medical doctor, but I was around 19 years old when this happened. During college, I had a habit of going to sleep very early once I got home from the university. I would go to sleep around 7 or 8 p.m. and then wake up around 1 a.m. to study or work on any of my assignments. I would stay up until around 4 a.m. and then go back to sleep as long as my tasks were done. It's also worth noting that I used to be a chain smoker. It bothered me whenever my siblings or my parents would call out my smoking, so it made sense to me to wake up whenever everyone in the house was still asleep. That way I could focus more on my tasks and smoke cigarettes as much as I wanted. Another thing I have to mention is that our house is inside a subdivision. We have some 24/7 convenience stores within walking distance, so if I ever had cravings, it was easy to access. Our house is pretty huge and has a gate. One night, I had to wake up around 1 a.m. again because my exams were coming up. Final requirements for the semester were also piling up, so I decided to stay up the entire night, focusing on all my tasks. That night, however, my little sister, who was also in college, told me to turn off all the lights outside our house and that I make sure that all the doors and the gates are closed. I wondered why, so I asked, "What for?" She said,
"There's a ghost of a woman dressed in a wedding gown. She carries a lantern and walks around our village at night. The reason why we have to turn off all the lights outside our house is so that she won't be attracted to it. I mean, why else would she be carrying a lantern? If she finds a house with the lights turned on, it is said that she gets curious. She drops her lantern and enters the house, especially if the house's gates are kept unlocked. Then she supposedly lives with the family."
I thought she was joking. She knows that I always wake up around 1 a.m. to study or focus on my tasks. She also knows that I smoke heavily and that I stink up the house with secondhand smoke whenever I do so.
Yeah, right, a ghost. We've already grown up, sis. Don't you think it's time to outgrow these ghost stories already? Besides, you're just trying to get me to sleep all night so that I won't smoke and stink up the house.
With a serious expression on her face, she said,
"I'm not joking. If you don't want to believe me, fine. Just please turn off the lights outside and keep our doors and the gate closed."
After that, she left me alone, went up to her room, and proceeded to go to sleep. I dismissed her explanation as just a hoax. However, that same night, I happened to run out of cigarettes. I decided to leave the house for a bit and walk to the nearby convenience store, which was 5 minutes away by foot. As I walked there, it was so quiet. It was already 3 a.m. Our neighbors' houses kept their lights off, so it was pretty dark too. The only light sources I had were the street lights and the moon. At some point on the walk there, it suddenly got really cold. There was no wind or breeze, but it's the kind of chill you feel when a freezer gets opened. It was very strange because I live in a tropical country where it's always humid and warm. Again, I dismissed it because I thought like a scientist, reasoning out that it was already 3 a.m. and it's usually cold around that time. I got to the convenience store, bought my pack of cigarettes, and proceeded to walk back to our house. This time, however, the cold feeling was now accompanied by that feeling that someone was looking or staring at me. It felt like someone was watching and following me. I looked around and behind me, but no one was in sight. I started to get scared, but I reasoned my way out of it and started to think again like a scientist. I thought to myself that maybe it's just that stupid, scary story my sister told. As I thought like that, I started to walk faster, almost like power walking back to my house. But as I got nearer, I saw something from afar. A few houses away, I saw a silhouette or a shadow of a woman approaching me. I froze. My heart started pounding. Hairs on the back of my neck stood up, literal goosebumps. When my eyes started to adjust to what I was seeing, it became clearer. She had a white gown and was wearing a veil that covered her face. She looked like a bride. It was strange because you could see her hair through her body as it flowed through her chest and went to her back. I wouldn't describe her movements as walking. It looked like she was swimming, or she was doing some sort of strange ballet movements. She was carrying a lantern with her left hand. There was a candle or something that flickered inside. As she got closer to me, I could hear what sounded like crying, like she was sobbing. What was also weird was that she had a facial expression that I'll never forget. She was smiling ear to ear. I couldn't see the rest of her face, but I could definitely tell that her lips were in the shape of a smile. The closer she got to me, the more I could hear her sobbing, and the colder the air felt. I tried my best to fight my own paralysis, but the best I could do at that moment was to shut my eyes tightly and utter a prayer in my head. I wasn't a guy of strong faith, but at that moment, I uttered all the prayers I knew from my childhood in my head. When I opened my eyes, I instantly regretted it. She was right in front of me. She stopped her bizarre movements. She was standing up right in front of me. The sounds of crying stopped. It was deathly quiet. At that moment, I shut my eyes again and started praying, almost begging for God to help me out. Then I heard her. She spoke, but it sounded like a whisper. Speaking in our native language, she asked,
"Where is my husband?"
She repeated this over and over. Each time it got louder and louder, like she was almost screaming at the top of her lungs. I tried my best not to pay attention and focus on praying instead. Suddenly, it became quiet again. At that moment, I didn't know whether I should keep my eyes closed or open them again. I was so scared to see whether she was still in front of me. I took a chance and opened my eyes again. She disappeared. The cold feeling was gone. I immediately ran to my house, turned off all the lights, and locked the gates and all the doors. I decided to spend the rest of my night in my room and try to get some sleep instead of studying or finishing my tasks. After coming home from the university the next day, I tried to ask around about that ghost in our village. Our village security guards told me that she was a woman from the Japanese era in our country during World War II. She was going to marry a Filipino soldier, but on their wedding day, her husband was abducted by the Japanese soldiers who proceeded to gun down everyone in the village. She was one of the few survivors during that attack. She was attacked and beaten up so badly that she couldn't walk properly. In the end, she was left for dead. The only thing she had left was a lantern that was given to her by her husband as a gift, since she was fond of collecting antiques. Her restless spirit haunts the village at night, searching tirelessly of her husband. Ever since then, I decided never to walk around our village late at night. I also decided to cut down and eventually quit smoking. I know from being a medical doctor that I shouldn't smoke, but the real reason is that I never wanted to see that ghost again. This story that I'm about to tell you is one of the scariest things that has ever happened to me. It was in early 2020. The day was January 13th. My whole family was getting ready for bed around 10:30 p.m. To give some background about my family and house, I live with my two older sisters, one younger brother, and my mom and dad. Our house is pretty weird because every room sort of has a different temperature and feeling. My mom and dad's bedroom is warm and cozy. My oldest sister's room is very dry. My second older sister's room is cold and wet. My brother's is warm and humid, but my room is always a spine-chilling cold that just pierces your bones. Even when it's warm outside and my room gets a little warmer, what I mean by pierces your bones is that when you're in my room, you feel uneasy to your core. So anyways, back to the story. So it's January 13th and it's getting late. My mom always says goodnight to everyone before they sleep, and I always say goodnight back. So everyone heads into their rooms and shuts off the lights, except for my younger brother and I. We usually stay up talking for a long time before going to sleep around midnight. After we're done talking, he'll go to his room. But today he said he didn't really feel well and he wanted to go to bed earlier, around 11. So as a responsible older brother, I sent him off to his room, thinking that I'll just go to sleep early today and get some good sweet rest. Boy, was I wrong. After an hour or so, around midnight, I still hadn't fallen asleep. My brother comes to my door asking if I can help him with his dog. He told me that his dog pooped on the floor and he needed help. So I get up and open the door, but to my surprise, my brother isn't there. It was just the empty, dark hallway. But now with that spine-chilling cold feeling that is usually only in my room. But I figured maybe he had just run back to his room, so I walked down the hallway to check on him. I open his door and I see him just sleeping peacefully. And what's odd is, his dog is also just sleeping peacefully. There was no poop and nothing seemed wrong with anything. Well, I just brushed it off as a prank he was playing on me. But boy, was I wrong again. After that, I went to get some water from the kitchen and saw that my mom and dad were still up. So I felt better and just went back to bed. Around 2 in the morning, I wake up from some crazy noises outside and I look out my window and I see our neighbor's dog barking like crazy towards our house. I found it odd because that dog is usually so quiet and tame. You wouldn't even know they had a dog. I got closer to the window to check if I could see what the dog was barking at, but I didn't see anything. I just laid back down, trying my best to think nothing of it. As I shut my eyes, I started feeling this unease creep over my mind and body, and I felt the spine-chilling air flowing around my room. The hairs on the back of my neck were standing up, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very off. I sat up to start looking around my room to find out where the wind was coming from when all of a sudden there's a knock on my door, not at the front door, but my room's door. I didn't think that anyone had come out of their rooms or walked down the hallway because I hadn't heard any footsteps or sounds before the knock. Right before I get a chance to respond to the knocks, I hear,
"Good night, George."
It's my mom, but for some reason I started feeling nauseated and my head started aching. Then she said again,
"Good night, George."
As genuine as it seemed, something felt off about the whole situation, and I felt like I shouldn't say anything back to her. I don't know why. And again,
"Good night, George."
At this point, she kept saying it over and over every few seconds. Then I get out of bed and turn on the lights. My heart was racing. As I got closer to the door, my heart was pounding louder and faster. She finally stopped saying goodnight, so I stepped back and thought that it was over. I calmed down a little, but I was wrong this time too. I don't know why, but I just couldn't believe that this thing was a ghost or something unexplainable. I just didn't believe in that kind of thing. That's why I was the only one brave enough to sleep in that room, even with the disturbing feeling of someone watching me all night. Then a few seconds later, I hear another knock. This time it's my brother.
"Good night, George."
At this point, I'm just shocked and confused about what's going on with them. Then, after one final knock, started chanting,
"Good night, George."
in unison, over and over like a broken record. Both my mom and my brother, both just taunting me from behind that door. Two of the people that I trust the most. After a few seconds of them saying "Good night, George" non-stop, I just couldn't take it anymore. I screamed, "Please stop it!" while holding my head and closing my eyes. I closed my eyes hard, wishing that this was all just a dream. And surprisingly, I opened my eyes, and yes, it was a dream. It's morning. The birds are singing. The sun is shining. Oh, and I smell bacon. I felt relieved that all of that wasn't my family messing with me. And me being me, I just brushed the dream off as my stupid imagination. But after that day, I kept having this dream night after night. The dreams didn't stop no matter what I did. I tried meditation, reading the Bible before sleeping, holding a cross in my hand, and I even kept the light on and my brother's dog with me, thinking that he could keep them away from me. Ha! Boy, was I really wrong. So after all those nightmares, I just asked my parents if I could move my bed into my brother's room, and they said okay. And to this day, I still sleep in my brother's bedroom. Even now, I'm not really scared of ghosts, but I wouldn't want anyone to go through what I did. I never told my family, but they feel creeped out enough in that room that no one uses it, and it's just a storage room. I wonder what would have happened to me if I stayed in that room. I have a feeling I might have lost my mind. And if you think that was the end of my paranormal experiences, it wasn't. I thought that too at first, but boy, was I wrong.